You are certainly familiar with a lot of the isms from art history. Surrealism, Cubism, Impressionism, Modernism. We could go on and on. But do you know about the one ism that was all the rage in the early 2010s? It's called zombie formalism, and thankfully it only lasted for a few years. It did, however, change the way we think about art, the art market, and our relationship to it. So, I thought we should get into it. Art lovers, welcome back to the channel. My name is Christopher West, and this is the place where we talk all things modern and contemporary art and design. And today I want to talk about a very brief period of time that started around 2010, 2011. There was an art movement that captivated a new breed of art collector. It only lasted a few years, but it included dozens, if not hundreds of artists, mostly white and mostly male. And there are a few names you might recognize. Alex Israel, Lucian Smith, Jacob Cassay, Oscar Murillo. These were the survivors, the dozens of others that could be lumped in with this group. No one really talks about them anymore. So why are we talking about them now? Well, what this movement did do, if only for a brief moment, is change some of the reasons artists made art. And some of those effects are still reverberating to this day. Traditionally, art is considered a noble pursuit. It's often said that you should only be an artist if you can't imagine doing anything else but make art. Do you think Van Gogh could have been a plumber? Or Jackson Pollock a lawyer? Absolutely not. And I know it seems like a lifetime ago, but I want us to think about what was happening back in 2008 and 2009. We were in the midst of the Great Recession. The small fledgling museum I was working for had just slashed its budget, and I was out of a job. So I tried selling art, but of course, no one was buying. And then something remarkable happened. By 2010, 2011, the art market came storming back. The Financial Times even described this recovery as gravity-defying. But on the heels of this recession, financial investors had lost some of the faith they had in traditional markets, and they were looking for alternative assets. Back in the olden days, the investor might be looking to put their money in Big Blue, a safe stock from a massive company that was almost certain to, over time, produce some nice returns. But the Wall Street traders at this time weren't so interested in sticking around for the long term. They wanted to short sell, pump and dump, and make a quick buck. And all of a sudden, there was a ton of money going into all these different segments that weren't traditionally considered investments. These new collectors, actually, collector is the wrong term. These new buyers were speculators. And they would treat art much the way they would their penny stocks. They would buy up as much art as they could, would talk the art up with their wealthy friends, and promote it on their Instagram pages. And as soon as the price inflates, dump the work at auction for a profit. Works that were purchased for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 were now selling at auction for sometimes $300,000, $400,000. But the people weren't buying this work because they loved it, and they didn't even have a basic understanding of art history. Tim Schneider in ArtNet called these collectors coins, collectors only in name. And these coins were buying solely based on rumor and speculation. They wanted large, bold works. Works that, to the untrained eye, looked sophisticated, would impress their friends, and maybe most importantly, looked good on Instagram. And they were pumping millions of dollars into the market. So, to satisfy the skyrocketing demand, a group of artists began to produce work to feed the machine. It makes sense, right? If you make cars and all of a sudden you look out and everyone's wanting SUVs, then you better start making SUVs. And for a couple of years, it seemed every art fair, every gallery was filled with this uninspiring, derivative artwork. That is, until the critics caught on. And the catchy name that came to define this movement comes from a column critic Walter Robinson wrote in 2014, Flipping and the Rise of Zombie Formalism. Art movements of the past were often associated with innovations in art, with pushing forward the boundaries of what art could be. Could art just be made of dots? Could art be conceptual? Or could art even be a Campbell's soup can? But the art of this time was doing nothing to move the conversation forward. It was like one of those zombies from The Walking Dead that just stood there and looked at you funny. You might think you were looking at abstract expressionism from the 1950s, or color field painting from the 1960s. Because these paintings were not made for art history, they were made for the art market. They were, in the words of author Seth Price, kind of pretty and kind of whatever. Jerry Saltz, the beloved critic for New York Magazine, soon chimed in with, "Zombies on the walls. Why does so much new abstraction look the same?" In his article, Saltz wrote, "A large swath of the art being made today is being driven by the market, and specifically by not very sophisticated speculator collectors who prey on their wealthy friends and their friends' wealthy friends, getting them to buy the same look-alike art. And this decorator-friendly art, that seems somehow cerebral to new collectors, had even more great nicknames. MFA abstraction, new modernism, art of the 1%, or, one of my favorites, crapstraction. And soon the market for this work dried up, and prices plummeted. The artists had ran out of the nouveau riche that were blindly feasting on this artwork, and the traditional collectors, the ones that loved art and studied it, weren't stepping in to fill the void. The collector/dealer, Niels Cantor, tried desperately to unload a work by the artist Hugh Scott Douglas that he had purchased for $100,000. When he could find no buyers, he was forced to sell it at auction, where it brought just a quarter of what he paid for it. I feel like we were a little bit drunk and didn't think of the consequences. Then the bottom fell out. Everyone got caught with their pants down. And one of the most famous examples of this happening goes to the dealer-collector Alberto Mugrabi. Now, the Mugrabi family are some of the biggest collectors in the world. They have vast holdings and work by artists like Picasso, Warhol, Basquiat, Koons. Alberto Mugrabi bought this painting by Lucian Smith at auction in 2013 for $389,000. A painting that had originally sold just 2 years prior at the artist's thesis exhibition at Cooper Union for $10,000. And not long after he bought it, Mugrabi called the painting basically unsellable. But this didn't just happen in the art world. There are car flippers, watch flippers, Birkin bag flippers. But there's a difference between flipping a Rolex and flipping a painting. When you flip an artist's work, you're not just flipping a commodity, you're messing with an artist's career. Most of the artists we have been showing here are the survivors. They still have shows, and sometimes sell their work for big money. A few have even signed on to important galleries. Alex Israel shows at Gagosian, Oscar Murillo shows at David Zwirner, and Talba Arbach shows with Paula Cooper. But that's just 3 artists. Maybe the only 3 artists that have been able to sustain their market. And there are a handful of others that are still showing regularly, but whose markets have never really recovered. But I guess this video is really about the artists we are not talking about, the ones that have been lost to that brief moment in art history. You can view this as a cautionary tale as to what happens when art gets confused with money. And that's all for today, folks. I'd really appreciate it if you'd check out some of my other videos. I'll put a link to those right up here. And if you haven't done so already, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. And to those still watching, you all are complete rock stars, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Ciao!